Okay, today we're going to talk about Article 5. It starts like this. La Repubblica una e indivisibile. Here, the Founding Fathers wanted to establish that it's unquestionable the unity of Italy. There isn't a possibility of separating from Italy. We've got to remember these articles are supreme principles and unchangeable, and also guaranteed by the President of Italy, who is also the Commander-in-Chief of the army, so he's got the manpower to really enforce this constitution. There was a political party, in fact, the Lega Nord, that wanted to separate North from Italy. But that wouldn't have been possible, it wasn't doable because of this article. Often parts of a territory want to separate from the territory because maybe they're very prosperous and it's a very big temptation to want not to share in that prosperity, or maybe they have very different values, very different culture, and they don't share these values with the rest of the territory, and there is not this sense of shared destiny, shall we say. But that's not the case for Italy. They wanted to prevent this separation because it does cause a lot of tension. You know, it does increase the tension between people until a point even of violence. If we look at other parts of the world that want separation, like Northern Ireland or the Basque Country or Chechnya, there has been a lot of violence and terrorism even in their struggles for independence. And this obviously is something worth avoiding. This also chimes nicely, this principle, this value, with the European Union, which has as its motto unity in diversity. The whole purpose of the European Union is to remove barriers, to remove frontiers, and to integrate, not disintegrate. So the European Union believes in this unity very much if the values are shared. With the European Union, we see the removal of barriers, so we've got freedom of movement of people, goods and services, and the harmonisation of the systems so that I can go and work in Germany or retire in Spain or maybe study in France, etc. We are becoming one community instead of 27 communities. And if you do separate, often there's a lot of tension if it's decided you reach the point of separation, even if there's not violence up to that point. Often there's a lot of tension between the parties on who gets what. For example, we spent 5 years in England discussing Brexit with Europe, and there was a lot of tension in Scotland. If they want to separate from England, the big question will be how much of the national debt they owe, they must pay, or does the Shetland Islands stay with England because it voted to stay? And the Scottish obviously wouldn't want this. They believe in their hearts that Shetland Islands are Scottish, etc. It would create a lot of tension. You know, who gets the Trident missiles, which are based in Scotland? Who pays the pensions, which should be paid by the United Kingdom to Scottish pensioners, etc., etc. So it can cause a lot of problems. And, you know, if there was separation in Italy, it would really mean dividing communities, dividing families maybe one side of the border you have half a family, the other side the other half, and they haven't got a right to visit their family, not an automatic right, no. Maybe they can't drive in the other part of Italy, or their qualifications won't be recognised in the future, etc. There's a lot of problems. If you separate communities, you're separating people and relationships, which can be very painful and also lead to a lot of violence for reunification after the separation. So it doesn't just end with separation. Now, the Constitution of England creates the unity from 4 parts. We've got England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland brought into this container state, the United Kingdom. But it does allow for separation. It does allow for the possibility. It's not unquestionable. We did have a referendum in 2016 for Scottish independence. They lost, the independence movement lost, but only just. It was 54% versus 46%. So, and maybe we do another independence referendum later on because of Brexit, because Scotland always wanted to stay in Europe, so they may ask. But also there's other parts of the United Kingdom that has left. The Southern Ireland, it left the United Kingdom in 1922, or Northern Ireland has a right for a vote if there's evidence of a majority that want to separate from Great Britain, from United Kingdom. They can have a referendum and separate. We've got this recent history of separating from Europe. So we do have this in our nature that, it's possible, it's not unquestionable, the unity, and the parts of the United Kingdom can go in the direction they want. We've got this idea of freedom being that, all the parts of the United Kingdom can move away from this union. The Scottish Union, according to the Constitution, was established in 1707 with a Treaty of the Union. So it's not been forever. And they still maintain a separate legal system, even though they still come under the United Kingdom legal system, but for some laws they have difference, they are different. So we do see a bit of diversity there. Then it continues. La Repubblica riconosce e promuove l'autonomia locale. By autonomia locale, we're talking about the commune, the regions, or the provinces. So they want that these bodies, these local bodies, have some sort of autonomy from the central state, which is Parliament. They can make decisions locally. They wanted to maintain a strong bond between the local politicians and the community. They didn't want the Parliament to decide everything. So this is trying to give a bit of freedom to be different, introduce a bit of diversity. Very democratic, very democratic. In the fascist period of Italy, the centre decided everything. Even if I wanted to open a shop, I would have to write to the minister and ask permission to open the shop. But now we've got the regions and the communes and the provinces that make decisions on lots of things. For example, in Turin we've got no car day. Sometimes that's decided by the region, or in Milan they've got congestion charges. This is decided by the region. So we can express our diversity, our different ways of doing things. We do have the competencies on what must be decided by which body in the Constitution. In Article 117 of the Constitution, it says what are Parliament's exclusive competencies, what are the region's exclusive competencies and the commune's exclusive competencies, and what do we share. For example, there are some competencies shared by the regions and parliaments. For example, schools are a competence of the parliament. They make decisions, for example, on maturity. When we reach 5th year of high school, the parliament decides what the maturity exam will be like, but the region can decide, for example, the types of schools it needs in its area. Like, does it want more Chinese taught in the area, or maybe it wants more economics courses, or classic courses. And then you've got the exclusive competencies of the Parliament. For example, penal law is an exclusive competence of the Parliament, or immigration. An exclusive competence of the region would be the airport. The Turin airport is controlled. The laws are made by the region. Or maybe the local area, the communes decide the local area, the parking policies and the laws for markets, where we have markets, etc., all decided by the commune. So we can see this local autonomy and how it's organised in the Constitution, but the important point is it recognises and promotes this autonomy. It recognises this autonomy because it does see it as a freedom that's not bestowed by the law, by the state. It's not given by the state, it's not established by the state, it pre-exists the state. That we can do things the way we want. So it recognises, doesn't establish this local authority. That's important. In England, we do also have a lot of autonomy. For example, for Scotland has got a parliament where they can make rules, and a separate legal system where it can make its own rules on many competencies. But I think the difference in England is this autonomy is bestowed by the centre, by the Parliament, who can repeal it. One of the principles of the United Kingdom Constitution is the Parliament is sovereign, and if it doesn't want Scotland to have a Parliament, it can take the Parliament away. It can even take a referendum away for independence if the Parliament wants, if the UK Parliament wants. So this autonomy is given more for a belief in a liberal state, a very small central state that just lets people live their lives the way they want, but it's a very strong centre. It might be small state, but it's very strong, and it can take that autonomy away. It can take control when it wants, according to our constitution. And cultural way of doing things. Then it continues, Attua nei servizi che dipendono dallo Stato il più ampio decentramento amministrativo. So here we're talking about the administration. We're not talking about policy. We're not talking about the regional policy decided by politicians. We're talking about how the administration decisions are made. For example, the school has an administration that's controlled by MUR, the Ministry of Instruction, and that, what it says, decentralization means that the people that make the decisions are those closest to the citizens that are affected by those decisions. I'll give you an example. The Ordinanza Scuola Lavoro is decided by the teachers in the school that know the students. It's not decided by MUR. It's not decided by Rome, because we want these decisions, the power of deciding, closest to the users of the administration. So it's decentralised, it's not centralised, this power. So that's very important too. We want a state that is, we look at the Constitution, we can see it's very big. In Article 3, it talks about how it must remove these obstacles, but very close to the people. So the politicians and the administrative decisions are very close to the people, and the people can complain to their local politicians for things that affect the local area, and maybe also the people making decisions in the administrations of the country are very accessible too. These principles, for example, the local autonomy is a principle that Europe has too. Europe calls it the principle of subsidiarity. So the lowest level must make the decisions. The lowest level where the impact of a law will make the decision. So Europe may make laws to protect our values, because it wants to protect, the European identity, maybe workers' rights and democracy and human rights. It makes laws on those, but it won't make laws on, for example, something which just affects Italy. TAV, for example, is decided by the Italian Parliament. No TAV or TAV. It's not decided by Europe. Or maybe, the school system is organised by the Italian Parliament and the regions, not by Europe. So we've got this principle of subsidiarity, where the lowest level makes the decisions, the level which will be affected by those decisions. And I think also the English Constitution doesn't dictate what the administration looks like. It's one area where a government can decide, do we want a health service, a national health service, or no national health service completely private, and who makes the decisions, the government or the local authority. This is all decided by the government of the day. The Constitution doesn't decide who makes these decisions, only that the Parliament is sovereign. It only says that the Parliament makes the decisions on, how we organise the administration of the United Kingdom. And then it continues, adegua, so la Repubblica adegua I principi ed I metodi della sua legislazione alle esigenze dell'autonomia e del decentramento. So when we make laws, when the Republic makes laws, it must always consider this or need for autonomy and decentralization. Again, this is about the anti-fascists. The founding fathers were anti-fascists. They didn't want a very, very strong central state and a very, very uniform country, which was very distant from the community, where the community was very distant from the power. They wanted the power diffused and very close to the people, and also the people able to express their diversity in all their, different ways.